the May patron questions, indeed. If you pay the correct tier of patronage and you're on the Discord, you'll be able to see a super secret channel. You can put your questions in. So I'm going to go through them now so we're all caught up. Next up was Mouse. Any comic I'm really into now or recently. Funnily enough, I was talking about Judge Dredd the other day with some friends, American friends who obviously haven't seen a lot of 2000 AD. I was explaining to them like how 2000 AD comics was like a great incubator for a lot of comic book talent. In particular, Tharg's Future Shocks, which were like little 5 to 6 page short stories in 2000 AD, which were like the Twilight Zone. And they basically launched, you know, like Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, you know, like people like this kind of got their starts in comic book writing, not, you know, illustrating, but writing specifically in these short stories. And I think it was Alan Moore who famously said, if you can't tell a story in 5 pages, then you're not a writer. And so these short stories were like really good ways to kind of do, you know, they were like a throwback to the classic, like, creepy comics, the ghost stories and stuff, but obviously with the sci-fi bent, and they had, like, a lot of them had really good twists. Obviously, it's hit and miss, like any short stories. So I was recommending those to my, like, American pals, because they know who Alan Moore is, they know who Neil Gaiman is, and I'm like, did you ever read 2000 AD? And the only one they've really heard of is Judge Dredd. So I've been going over a lot of that again so we can kind of talk about it. Mouse also requests Patreon content. He's a $100 patron, so he gets to ask for bespoke content, which I am behind on, but we knew that was going to happen. Don't worry, it's coming. And the content request was on either the Planet Key, Killerfish, alternate attacks, cheating, match-fixing rumors. I mean, calling them rumors is generous. You're more generous than me. Or do a retrospective of my days in Four Kings. Now, the retrospective in Four Kings would be super easy because it's just me talking. But I'm almost tempted to do the German players story because I was in the Dead Man's Drive the other day looking at some old files and their names were in there. So maybe it's the case that I can like pull something interesting out that no one's ever seen before. But the bottom line is they were about as blatant as it could get, and it blew my mind that they were ever allowed to participate in these tournaments at all. In fact, I had friends in the German scene that were hitting me up going like, can't you do something about this? And this is when I was working for the Naughty website. This is when I was working with the bad people. So the objectively evil people. And so I published an article called something like, why do we continue to invite problematic players to tournaments? Because it was just after the loader thing, I think, because I was so despised by the community in that moment in time. Because I think it had gone something like, I'd bullied Babam, very real thing that happened, to I chokeslammed a 12-year-old Dota 2 competitor at a charity event in Sweden, which also really happened. Nobody paid any attention to anything I wrote for like 6 months. And basically, the replies in the Reddit thread to that article are like, why do we invite problematic hosts to host events? That was it, pretty much en masse. So I think it'll be interesting because we can also look at that and like how basically we do this all the time in esports. If somebody who is a bad man brings up a point that would improve the industry, we'd rather see the industry burn or sink into a quicksand made out of shit than we would fix the problem, because we don't want to agree with bad man. You know, see everything Thorin's ever said. It's happening now with Maui. It's happening with Kassad. It used to happen with Sponge, but he's a shill now. And the community love him, and they're only going to love him for another year or two before they hate him again. So make hay while the sun shines, I guess. But yeah, you know, it's like, that's where we're at, basically. Yeah, shit, this is nothing to do with the patron questions, but let's put it in. I want to publicly apologize. It turns out, guys, the whole time, if you were there for Rolf Gate during the No Majors Club, it turned out the whole time that it was actually Alive Cells that were in shambles and Dead Chads that stayed winning. So it turned out, yes, the Dead Chads were right the whole time. A crazy story, just in case you're a regular viewer and you weren't there for the No Majors Club, or you're just a patron and you're like, what the fuck's going on here? Why is he talking about Rolf Harris? Why is he talking about a 93-year-old dead pedophile? It's a very good question. So basically, when we were doing the No Majors Club, a guy, I presume from Australia, came into the chat and said, I've just been texted by my mate who says he knows for a fact that Rolf Harris is dead. And so I went onto Twitter, he wasn't dead. I looked at the news, he wasn't dead. This sounds like that song by Shaggy. He wasn't dead. He wasn't dead. I looked on Wikipedia. He wasn't dead. And so I said to him, this is how misinformation spreads, brother. This is how misinformation spreads. We had a whole day of Rolf Watch, as Jay says. Then another day of Rolf Watch, another day of Rolf Watch, and then we just concluded that this was misinformation. Now, here's the crazy thing. About 48 hours after the No Majors Club was officially finished and I was in the hyperbaric time chamber trying desperately to get the grey out my beard, it turned out that actually Rolf Harris was announced as dead, but with a specific quirk to it, that because of all the negative attention it was going to generate because of what a piece of shit he was, he died on the 10th of May, and they'd done the burial already before they told the news 2 weeks later. That guy came into the chat and said that, I think it was the 10th of May. So it turned out the guy was right the whole time. And listen, I don't know why you're getting text updates from fucking nonsense. I don't know what that's about. Don't want to know. But at the end of the day, when you're right, you're right. And he was right and I was wrong. So I want it on the record, the chatter was right. Okay, and once again, much like when the Queen died, this stream was the first to know. We knew, I think it was 48 hours before the Queen died, because some contact of mine, a source, works as a real journalist, hit me up and said, yeah, we're on standby. We've been told she's on her way out. We've all wrote the obits and we're ready to go. And I was like, yeah, whatever. She's been on standby for ages. And then she died. So, yeah, there you go. If you want to know which dubious celebrities are going to die first, this is a great place to hang out. Right, next question. This was from Johnny Gazer. Another topic that had me curious is the band Deftones. I've seen you wear shirts of theirs a few times. I'm not sure how into them you are. They are a band that stuck with me since my formative years, and I feel that in some ways I've grown with them as their style has matured over the years. I could probably call them my favourite band of all time, even if I couldn't pick a specific time. They were definitely my favourite. So, for me, it's like a difficult call because I have very broad tastes in music. When I was growing up, like, two things happened to me at the same age, right? I got given a mixtape from a friend, which on one side was like Two Live Crew, As Nasty As They Wanna Be, right? Which is a really juvenile 80s hip-hop album where all the songs have sexual lyrics. And on the flip side to the cassette, if you're a Zoom and you don't know what cassettes are, ask your parents. And on the flip side to the cassette was a bunch of NWA songs, in no particular order. And the same friend gave me a double cassette, which was Slayer, what was it called? Decade of Aggression? It was their double live album. It was after Seasons in the Abyss. So I got given at the same time, like, formative hip-hop and ridiculous metal. And I loved both of those. You know, I loved all of that when I was, like, very young. I thought that was great. So I always had, like, very broad tastes in music. And then when we went into the, mid to late 90s, it was trip-hop, it was breakbeat. These were the things we were listening to, like Cold Cut Let Us Play was a really formative album for me. DJ Shadow Introducing is a fucking classic. Nightmares on Wax, Car Boot, Soul. These were albums every one of my generation had. But the difference between me and the people who had those albums were I had all of the Slayer catalogue. I had all of the Metallica catalogue. But I also had all of, like, NWA, all of Cypress Hill, whatever the 90, all of, like, Wu-Tang. So, like, my stuff was, like, I used to listen to all sorts of music, And so I never picked a genre, and I never understood genre hatred. And what was super interesting is, a lot of people forget this in the musical history of things, pre what they call nu metal, right? There was these combinations where we threw hip-hop bands and rock bands together all through the mid to late 90s, and typically on soundtracks. And people forget there was, like, soundtracks like fucking, was it the Judgment Night soundtrack? Does anyone remember Judgment Night? It was like a movie about a bunch of guys in an RV, I think, who get stuck in a bad neighborhood. And anyway, like, the Judgment Night soundtrack was a big one. Like, bands like Faith No More and Booyah Tribe, Onyx and Biohazard, Anthrax and Public Enemy, Bring the Noise, that was a separate thing. But there was this blending of, like, metal and hip-hop that, funnily enough, went on to inform the breakaway genre of nu metal. Principally, Deftones were original nu metal when they did Adrenaline. Obviously, Korn, when they released their eponymous debut album. Limp Bizkit with $3 Bill Y'all. There was like this little branch that went off, and that's what nu metal was. And nu metal was good at first, and then you had a choice. The fork in the road for good bands was you blossomed into your own musical sound, like the Deftones did, or you became Fred Durst and Limp Bizkit. And I think all of their stuff has aged terribly. I have this argument. I got a friend who thinks Significant Other is like one of the best albums of like the noughties. I think it's aged awfully. I think it's fucking embarrassing, frankly. I think it only gets worse for Limp Bizkit as their career goes on. But like, if you're the Deftones, they almost got sucked into it with Around the Fur. I thought that was very commercial. They did a lot of crossovers with Soulfly, which was Max Cavalera from Sepultura's new band, and they needed a big pop, so they did some collabs on the album, which I don't think were great. And I never really liked My Own Summer as a single, even though that was like a big track for the time. But I think once they got past that, you get White Pony, and White Pony is a modern rock classic, and it's got nothing to do with nu metal. So bands like Deftones, Tool, you know, they go into this, like, stratospheric musical, you know, world. Bands like Korn and very much Limp Bizkit, they go over here, and it's just garbage. So, yeah, I do love the Deftones. I think if you wanted me to, like, rate them out of all of the rock bands, it's very hard. But they're certainly one of my favorite bands that I come back to. I'm in and out on some of the albums, I won't lie. I think they've had lots of problems. Some is just creative bloat. Obviously, the death of the bassist, well, a 2-year coma for their bassist, Chi Cheng, and then obviously his death. Them not wanting to release material they recorded prior to his car accident that put him in a coma. That really left them in a creative vacuum where they had to essentially create an album from scratch in a diminished period of time. But I think some of their later stuff, like Ohms, is fucking great. There's not many bands musically that endure as long as they have, because they've put out a banger album in every decade since the 90s. And they technically started at the end of the 80s. So, you know, that's fucking crazy. They're a great band, in other words. So, and listen, if that's a bespoke content request and not a question, I'll happily do my Deftones album tier list. I'll happily do that because, you know, I like talking about music because it takes me back to my roots when I was a music journalist. Question: is there a specific dish of food you'll never touch again? Let me think. What have I had that's really fucking gross? Yeah, I gotta be honest. I don't like bugs. I know this is like a bit of a meme because everyone's like, you will eat the bugs. You will live in the pod. This is the future liberals want. But I ate a lot of bugs when I was out in like Thailand and like Southeast Asia and stuff. And it's like, I'm not doing it in like a fucking snooty, ooh, look at them eating insects kind of like, you know, highfalutin kind of way. I understand they're a great and cheap source of protein for a lot of people living beneath a poverty line we can't even conceive of in the West. So when you say like, ooh, eating insects, you are being pathetic. But what I found is, you know, I don't know if I got it super unlucky, but I tried like a candied scorpion, and I've tried grubs, and they have this funk to them that there's no like jazzing it up, and it's just not very nice. It's like it's a very putrid taste. Like, I don't know if you've ever come across, like, because if you're a fisherman, you know this smell. But when you have a bunch of maggots, like, you know, for your bait, and there's just a group of maggots in a box, that smell from what they exude is really pungent and vomit-inducing. And there's an element of that taste when you eat a grub. And it's just not, there's no getting, you can't season that. There's no nicely spiced for that. So, yeah, I'm not big on eating insects in general as a rule. So, yeah, not for me. Zumba asks, are there any more stories of weird people you met? like the guy who threw a flashbang in that shed. That's TJ, aka The Joy. You know, he pops up on my YouTube comments from time to time, but we haven't talked for a long time. You know, listen, there's lots of, you know, this is esports. Like, everyone's a freak. So, yeah, I got tons of stories of like, crazy people. I'm trying to think, like, you know, because a lot of my friends are just fucking crazy. You know, I've talked about this before. I have to be super careful about giving out names. But, you know, I got a friend who works as a lawyer, and he leads. I think I talked about him on a stream before. He is the most normal, button-down person of all time. You know, like, he hired a boat for, like, the coronation, and he, you know, and went out, and they were sipping champagne, and God save the king, and all that nonsense. But he's also one of the, like, grimiest and sleaziest, craziest assholes I know, like hands down. Like, he is a guy who, he gets two, 3 drinks in, and he is just out of control. So one of the endearing images that will be seared into my brain from this guy is, we went out. It was like it was someone's birthday. I can't even remember who it was, but it was like a landmark birthday. So, you know, 40th or 30th or something like that. And anyway, so we were all out. We ended up, like, you know, sitting out at someone's like house. And we'd had a lot to drink. And when he's had a few, he just wants to fucking take it to the next level. So he's turned around and gone, right, which one of you cunts can get some coke? And turns out lots of those cunts could get coke. So lots of coke turned up. And anyway, the image that was burnt into my brain is like at 4 or 5 a.m. to pull himself out of the drunk hole. He's literally, all this coke's turned up to this party. And someone's ordered food as well. Someone's ordered, like, kebabs. So we've had a Coke delivery and a kebab delivery at the same time, which sounds antithetical if you know anything. You know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so we had a Coke delivery and a kebab delivery. And this guy, who is a normal guy, he is literally fucking... He's going to the guy who's got the Coke, and he's just going, like, rude as fuck. Big lines, yeah, big lines, big lines, big lines. And he's doing these fucking Hollywood reels, like, it's just ridiculous, like, just hoovering it up like it's nothing. And, you know, it should impede his appetite in some way, but nah, he is eating fistfuls of kebab meat, just with not even the bread, just picking it up like a barbarian, just all chili sauce oozing through his fingers, you know, all over his nose and his face while he's doing beak. It's like... You know, and then we all crash out. We get up at, like, fucking, you know, 10 a.m. and he's just, like, having a stretch. You know, good night, lads. See you next time. It's like, what? This guy's a fucking animal. So there are people out there, you know, it's like they just walk among us, man. Like, you just got to fucking realize, like, sometimes you're not player one. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes there's just someone out there who was just leading a life like you can't conceive of it. They're on some other shit. You know what I mean? But yeah, I'll have a think about craziest people in esports maybe. Carve with a question. Newly appointed Discord moderator Carve says, who do you think has failed more speech checks? Zuma on his marathon Fallout playthrough, or Joe Biden, 46th president of the United States? This, of course, refers to, we do have an official Zoomer on the Discord. One Zoomer. We you know, it's like, it's to prove we're not just all a bunch of miserable boomers. We keep him around. It's kind of just to show, you know, yeah, all right. Our fan base does span all ages, and he's a big Fallout fan, and he's just been playing the Fallout 1 and 2, and yeah, he was like streaming it on the Discord, which is great. You know, I should probably stream some gameplay, but if you like watching Fallout playthroughs, this kid does love Fallout. So, but also I imagine, yes, failed a bunch of speech checks and probably doesn't know half the references. You know, that is the curse of being a Zoomer, really, is just your idea of pop culture is fucking TikTok flossing. This is from Reykjavik. As a true connoisseur of fine dining establishments, what was the best Wetherspoons you've been to, and why is it the full moon in Dudley? For those who don't know, the full moon in Dudley is notorious. You know instantly what you're getting. Right, so this is the outside of the full moon, and people are like, "Oh, it looks nice." I don't know. Maybe I'm losing my touch. Maybe I've made a bit too much money now. because I couldn't conceive of ever spending time in this place. Even though this looked like a good, I mean, just look at that. I don't even know what to say. Yeah, books for all the reading that we do in there in the full moon. That's where you go. But no, I've been to Wetherspoons. The interesting thing with Wetherspoons is they're almost deliberately universally shit. I think deliberately so. It's kind of weird. Brits are strange people, dude. Like, when it comes to the pub experience, like, we have a very preconceived idea of what that experience is and what it should entail. You know, people like the idea of a cheap fry-up, oh, get up at 11, yeah, get there when the pub's open. This is what they want to do in their day off. Cheap fry-up, £5, 2 slices of bacon, 2 sausages, beans, and an egg. What more do you want? You know, and they get there, and then, like, we don't even, like, there's an entire generation of Brits that don't know and will never know what craft ale is. They just won't. They won't ever know what that is. They think an exotic beer is Stella Artois. That's it. And that's their limits. That's, you know, they go abroad and they ask for that. And it's crazy. It really is crazy. I don't know why you would want to live like that, but people do. And, you know, whatever makes you happy, I suppose. So, yeah, Wetherspoons cater to that audience. And that audience, that customer base, is a very real thing in Britain. You know, like, if for example, I don't see the type of person that would drink in a Wetherspoons when I go out drinking in Birmingham. Because, like, those bars, it's just not good. Like, they're not having a good time. They get there and it's like, well, what beer would you want? Well, we've got an IPA, a Bock beer. This one is toasted hops. This is a Saison, and that I don't know any of these things. I want a Carlin. I want a fucking Foster's. I want Tetley's. You know, I want Boddingtons. You know, and it's like, if you don't offer that to them, they don't like it. And also decor. When you go into a Wetherspoons, it feels like you're in your nan's living room. Do you know what I mean? The slightly tatty curtains, the over-patterned carpet, chairs you sit in that puffs up just a little bit of dust because no one sits there except when they have guests. It's got that feel to it. And I think for a lot of working class Brits, because I know this sounds like I'm being very derisory about my own people, right? Well, which I'm not trying to be, but, you know, broaden your horizons. But yeah, you know, I think for a lot of British people, that's a very comforting feel. The tat, the slightly griminess to it. Because there's no reason for a modern Wetherspoons to harbour that look. And yet they all still seem to do it. So there's something to it, I would probably say. Next up, we have Mouse again. Do I get a question after accidentally featuring twice in the first month? No, and that is indeed your question. Laurent à la Maison asks, what story took the most amount of time to get right, and why did you still get the tick rate wrong in CS2? I did, didn't I? I did get the tick rate wrong, I suppose, if we're being technical about it. What story took the most amount of time? I mean, it depends, because there are still stories I'm working on that I want to get right, that I think I have all the pieces. I'm just missing one piece. And I'm always keeping my eyes open for that piece. There's stuff I've been working on since 2013, 2014. But, you know, I mean, look, it's going to be the same. If you want a basic answer, it's going to be the same every time. It will be iBuyPower. Because people never remember the chronology on that story, which was, it was a fix. Oh, no, Richard's lying. Here's some evidence it was a fix. Oh, no, the people who are saying it's a fix are lying. Here's some financial transactions from someone that acted as a broker. Yeah, that guy's lying. Then you have, like, basically another 4 or 5 months of me being called a liar, everyone in NA hating me, people doing all sorts of fucked up shit to me, like trying to, you know, like just constant potential for cybercrime and all sorts of nonsense, only for us to, through working with CSGO Lounge, conclusively find a paper trail along with evidence from a phone with corroborating text messages that prove beyond a shadow of a doubt bets were placed on the days that we saw the bets and the transfer of skins. So that took 6 months, like, for one story that, you know, somebody like Jake Lucky would just tweet that out and do no background work, No forensic work, no investigative work. They would just tweet it out. This person has accused this team of fixing matches. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. That would be it. And people would say that was good now. But back when I was doing it, because you were accusing someone popular, you couldn't get away with it. And so I had to have everything. Everything. Funnily enough, when it comes to match fixing, that does appear to be the standard by and large. So yeah, I'll say that. But there will be stories that come out that will conclusively be stories I've worked on for over 10 years. If I assume and I get them over the line. 2 Ton asks, in an alternate universe, you become the esports historian and Thorin becomes the investigative journalist. Do you think there are any events that will play out in the same fashion aside from not being able to visit Brazil? Probably not. I think, for starters, if I was the esports historian, there would be a massive blind spot for Quake, certainly Overwatch, because I just would never have followed that. I would never have dedicated my time to it. I was looking at Duncan's YouTube channel the other day because I was pulling some videos to watch. And he's got 142 videos on Overwatch alone. How can you be asked? I don't even know, man. So, he really took the esports historian thing seriously to a degree I never would. I would never have watched Overwatch to chronicle that. The only thing that's interesting and relevant about Overwatch as it relates to esports is how the league will fail and what it will do to the perception of esports for the rest of time. And I think Duncan has when it comes to creating content, I think he has a much more fastidious work rate than me. I think he does a video a day without fail. I'm not that guy. So, yeah, there'd be blind spots, although Source would be more well covered, the history of Source. Duncan wasn't there for that, didn't want to cover that. And he's gone back and done some stuff around Source through research, but as I ran the website that covered Source from start to finish, Source would be much more well covered, because I can tell you 1,000,001 stories, and stories from someone who was there. A genuine eyewitness account. In terms of him being an investigative journalist, it's kind of interesting. I think he definitely would have the chops for it, but I also think the most frustrating aspect of it for him would be just knowing stuff about people and knowing they get away with it. I don't know how long Duncan could sit on Pandora's box without wanting to fucking expose everybody. And it's hard, I know people have done some fucked up shit, and I just got to swallow it because, there ain't enough evidence, and you have to have evidence, and it's maybe not your story to tell, and they don't, and people don't want to tell it, and this can be anything from, people don't even like it when they get duped in a contract. People feel stupid, people don't want the world to know they signed something stupid. So even silly little things like that, people can say to you, look, Richard, can you back channel and help me? But please don't write about this. And you go, all right, yeah, I don't want to make you look like a cunt. That would break Duncan's brain, I think. I think, I'm not saying he doesn't know as much as me, but I think, in terms of what's bad in the industry, but I think one thing Duncan always does is when he learns of something bad, he will dedicate his energies into manufacturing an outcome where it gets out and where he can talk about it. Whereas, I'm more patient in the sense I'll sit on it for longer and hope another piece of evidence will fall in my lap, or someone will trip up, or something else will come out. And I play, I'll play a long game with it. I think me and Duncan, I wouldn't say we disagree on it, but it's it's 2 different philosophies. If I never get that person, they get away with it, right? But I'm bound by journalistic standards, investigative journalistic standards. I have a high evidentiary standard. Duncan, is the podcaster extraordinaire, and therefore I guess he gets the color outside the lines a little bit more than me. So probably those would be the 2 fundamental differences, but not much. We're both very similar in a lot of areas. We're only really different in a couple. So, King of Blades, due to the esports winter, do you think we could see third-party tournament operators start charging viewers to watch events in the next year or so? I feel like someone will eventually do it just to survive, and we'll deal with the hate as it goes. And this is very interesting. Obviously, you can watch, there's like a 40-minute video I put up on my YouTube channel, which did the rounds on social media, because people are starting to wake up to the fact that we need a sustainable revenue stream, and the natural place to start would be actually monetizing these fans. And I want to explain something, because people have been doing gotchas with this. People are like, oh, Richard, I remember you in 2010 and 2011 when you called out MLG for doing pay-per-view. How the tides turn, or whatever the fuck. I don't even know if that's the right thing. Well, listen, the difference was when we were growing esports, give it away for free. This is like a fundamental basic of any, if you grow in a business. Give people a taste of it for free. They still do this in everything, right? Like, oh, I can sign up for Amazon Prime. By the way, thanks to all the people who've been giving me their Amazon Prime while it's been going on. I have noticed. But, I can sign up to Amazon Prime and then cancel it. I can sign up to, like, Disney Plus and I can get, like, a month, 2 months, and I can cancel it. I can sign up to loads of shit and just cancel it if I don't want to. They give you a taste, they back that the service will be good, and they think you'll stick around. And that was why, back when esports was growing, keep in mind, that was 2010, right? So 2010, 2011 is when MLG and a few other people were talking about pay-per-view, and I said no. And I'll explain why I said no. We just come out of a global recession. We just come out of the collapse of esports in 2008. We'd entered a golden age of new tech, streaming, and YouTube was blowing up. And I was like, if we start charging for this now, we kill esports forever, because the people are coming to see what the fuss is about for the first time since 2008. And if we throw it behind a paywall, they go away and they never come back. So context matters. Now we've been giving away esports for 13, 14 years, and we've got this supposedly huge global audience. Do any of them want to pay? No. Okay, well, now we need to start being selective, because 1 million people who pay nothing is worse than 50,000 people that pay $5. That's the thing. The big numbers aren't impressive anymore. The money needs to be there if you want esports to be what you want it to be. And let's be clear. You want it to be the best players playing in the best tournaments that look like ESPN, right? And you want huge prize pools for some reason, even though you don't get any of that, right? But you love it when there's a big prize pool. And you want the broadcasts to look like, ESPN. You want your favorite casters and your favorite analysts. And you don't want no names on your broadcasts. Well, I'm sorry, my dudes. Sponsors aren't going to cover that. They don't even get close a lot of the time, right? There has to be something else. By the way, your refusal to pay $5 to ESL is why ESL sold out to the Saudis. It's why before they sold out to the Saudis, they were charging teams $5 million or whatever it was to be part of the Louvre agreement. That's why we've got pseudo franchise teams in CS. That's why we've got this low standard of Counter-Strike, all because you wouldn't pay. So do I think people are going to try it? There's one great big bottleneck. Developers can say no. Developers can turn around and say, if you dare create a sustainable ecosystem, we just won't give you the license to have the game anymore. But in which case, fuck it. It's all dead anyway. So, I mean, something's got to give. And for me, pay-per-view is a model that should have just happened by now. I mean, put it this way, right? What does it tell you? And this isn't to insult you guys. I know, I love my fucking community. I love my audience. I consider you guys to be pretty well informed. So I don't think this applies to you, but it's ridiculous that, so say for example, when I do a stream, like I'm looking at it, 150 something subs. And it's like, if ESL was running a game to the same, like now, they wouldn't get that. Right? And it's like, why? Well, because they don't offer anything for it. And it's like, why? Like, you don't get any bonus. You just get some ESL emotes. And it's like, if there was something cool that was paywalled behind a sub, or just paywalled in general, or if they could just say, like, listen, we'll give you Into the Breach versus Apex for free. You can have that for free. But if you want to watch the next game in Pro League and it's FaZe and RV, and you want to watch it with enhanced features and simple cam and all this stuff, it's $5. I'm sorry, it's $5. I saw a lot of people as well. They were objecting. They said, I wouldn't pay $5 to watch fucking Vitality versus Gamer Legion at the major. And it's like, dickhead, you don't pay for the game. You pay for the whole event. Even that'd be a start. Just pay for the whole event. Like, that is so far ahead of the sports pay-per-view model. Sports pay-per-view, I pay for one match. I pay for one bout. You know? I pay $20, $30 for a UFC event, and I get a series of fights, but ultimately I'm really paying for the one at the top. I do get an undercard. Thank you very much. I get one night of fighting. You know, if you'd paid $5 for 3 weeks of the supposedly best CS games in the world, that would be revolutionary. And in terms of it being value for money, it would be huge. So, I don't know. It seems crazy to me that I see people spamming in the replies on my Twitter, on my YouTube video. No, I'll just go and watch something else. Please do. If the paywall discourages you, you're not really an esports fan, and we need to know what we've got. We need to know who's willing to spend. The time for the great sift is here. We need to get rid of the clingers on and the fucking fad people and just get them out, and let's see how many true esports fans we actually have. Because I know adults will pay for content they like. And I know kids will get their parents to pay for content they like. That has to be our audience moving forward, or we're fucked. This is Mouse again with another question. He thinks he can just ask questions, this guy, like for free. He's like 100 questions a month, Mouse. Right? Do you like city builders? Do I like city builders? Yes, I do like city builders. I play a lot of city builders down the years. I think they've got a bit bloated and lost in recent times. I played one that I thought was going to be better than it was. I think it's called The Old World, because it said it's civilization combined with Crusader Kings, and I was like, oh my god, that's going to be great. And then it just sort of wasn't. It was like watered down versions of both, and yeah, I didn't really like it all that much. And I haven't really played a city builder that's like really jumped out at me for like a large part. I don't know if I count Dwarf Fortress. It sort of technically is, but it isn't. You know what I mean? Because ultimately you don't control all the elements of it. And look, I think it's very hard as a boomer, right? Like, Civ 2, it's simple, but it's great. You know what I mean? It's simple, sure, but it's perfect. It was perfect gameplay. You just turn up and play it and turn it on and do it. And even new Civs, by comparison these days, don't quite hold up. So, yeah, you know, city builders used to be one of my favorite genres of game. I think now probably the best, like my favorite type of game is I like little coffee break strategy games where it's something stupid and I can play it in 30 minutes, like when I'm working on an article, or huge sprawling CRPGs where I get lost in a world for 400 hours. That's what you have to have for me. Well, that, and obviously Sex with Stalin, which was Game of the Year, and these fucking games journalists refuse to acknowledge that. The losers, scum. Right, Atarian asked, what did you think of the Raiders draft? I'm a little annoyed they didn't address the secondary until the 4th round. I was pleased to see that the players drafted looked like they seemed to fit the scheme, and there wasn't a Cleland Farrell level reach. Cleland, sorry. I still hate Josh McDaniels. Fuck that guy. I mean, I think I talked about something on the stream. I already answered this question, so I won't repeat it, and so I can dig that clip out and link it to you if you want to see. So I did go into each specific draftee. The bottom line is, I think it was an okay draft. I'd rate us at like a B plus ish, maybe a B. It wasn't great, but I'm happy with the players we got. You know, look, the big question mark is gonna be Maya, because losing Waller at tight end, as I said, is like a huge loss for us. And I think Maya gets straight into this team, actually. I really do. And if he's good, and he looks to be Good in the catch, very good in the catch. This is based on college stuff I've seen. He looks to be very good in the catch. He doesn't look to get a lot of yards after the catch, but he's better at blocking maybe. So we got a blocking tight end option. So I don't know. I mean, that to me is the huge, like, that's the important part of the draft. Like, how good that guy is. And if he's good, brilliant. We might do okay next season. If he's bad, we got problems. It's one less option for Garoppolo. And yeah, I think if this season goes similar to how it did last year, and I actually think we might be worse this season overall, I think McDaniels will be out, Adams will be out, and I think we'll lose Josh Jacobs as well because of all the fuckery making him a franchise player so we don't have to get into contract negotiations with him. So yeah, problems ahead for the Raiders, no doubt, but it's the Raiders. It's always a travesty with the Raiders. Alfredo! Are there any interesting or surprising side effects of Brexit on your professional or personal life worth sharing? Honestly, no, because I don't really do anything. I'm a bum. I'm a journalist. I write at home, and honestly, I'm insulated from the financial reprisals because I'm in a privileged spot of being my own boss. I don't really travel all that much, and when I do, it's like, listen, it's still a pain in the ass. We've got our own queue now, but all we're doing is going through the stuff that a lot of European countries go through to travel across Europe. It's not the end of the world. It's silly. It's dumb. I wouldn't have done it. I know everyone thinks, again, that one of the great lies told about me, Richard Lewis was pro-Brexit. Whatever. Certainly wasn't. But yeah, it just didn't really impact on me. I've seen it impact on friends, but it didn't impact on me. Born with a capital A. Thoughts on the current US 2024 presidential race? Seems to be a lot of media coverage around the Republican primary, but not around Biden's Democratic challenges. Well, I'm going to actually write something about this. Ready. It's time. It's time. We're starting to get a much better understanding of the lay of the land. You will notice DeSantis was pilloried for announcing his candidacy on Twitter, via Twitter, and because it was 20 minutes late, it was deemed to be a shambles, blah, blah, because he wouldn't work with the media. And, oh yeah, and by the way, shit, I totally forgot. I can do this now. Joe Biden, wake up. Yeah, just sit in this channel and do the soundboard while I'm streaming. Perfect. Anyway, the soundboard might never end. It might just become a permanent feature. It might be the replacement for Sam. You know what I mean? Anyway, you have to understand, according to the media, there isn't a rival to the Biden candidacy. They are fully behind the state narrative that Joe Biden, despite being clearly I don't even think it's a lie anymore. I think it was maybe irresponsible as a point of speculation pre-2020, but here we are in 2023. Joe Biden has dementia. He has dementia, and it is accelerated, and he doesn't know where he is half the time. He can't complete a sentence, let alone a speech. He is fucking bouncing off the walls. And anybody who has an elderly relative that's gone out the same way knows exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. I don't understand how he can even conceivably run, but that's where we're at, and there's not really a lot they can do. They made a bed, and they have to lie in it. It's not like they can just throw it over to Kamala. She is thoroughly unpopular. So what do you do? Well, I guess we call DeSantis, Death Santis, the new Hitler. Again, you'll notice he's actually more dangerous than Trump, if you believe the recent articles. Of course, who saw that coming? Saw that coming. I saw that coming in 2016. So it's interesting. Basically, the media can't talk about Biden having Democratic challenges because then you get into the world of why are they challenges? And they're challenges because he's too old to run. He has dementia. His administration's done a terrible job. And while people would vote for a sensible Democrat candidate over Donald Trump, some people in the swing voters might have reservations about voting for Biden again based on the job he's done and the fact he's fucked. He's bouncing off the walls. So the media can't really talk about those things because when you address those things, you bring them into life. You make them real. And they just want the Democrats to win again. So, because they're state-owned, they're state apparatus. So yeah, it's I'll write about it because I think this presidential race is like, I don't think I'm not gonna fall into the trap of saying it's like the most important election of all time, because it's not. It's just another fucked up American election. But what's significant about it is, in terms of terrible candidates, it really has the potential to raise the stakes again, which I didn't even think was possible. You know, you thought Trump Clinton, then Trump Biden. Well, imagine a world where it's Trump with a grudge and Biden with real dementia. You could get that, which would be worse than any of the other ones. So, right, Roosty, what book of fiction has left the most lasting impression on you? And what book have you read the most times? Lasting impression for a book? Fuck, that's a hard question out of left field. The most lasting impression. Yeah, it's really tough. I can probably do what book I've read the most times. And that would be Naked Lunch by William Burroughs. Used to be able to recite whole chapters of that book. I was fascinated with that book when I was at college. It was one of the last books that was subject to an obscenity trial. And it hit me when I was getting into experimental literature. And William Burroughs is a fucking genius. One of just the greatest minds, potentially, of the last, 200 years. Not just in a literary sense. But the book that's made the biggest impression. Because stuff really comes out of left field. Would it be a journalist? It would probably have to be something journalistic. And no, it wouldn't be Fear and Loathing. I'm more influenced by Hell's Angels than I am Fear and Loathing. Or the 72 Campaign Trail. Those books are, Death in the Afternoon by Hemingway. I recommend that all the time. Buy copies of that book for my friend. Only got one, apparently. I was talking with him the other day about it. He brought it up because we were saying Hemingway, right? We had an argument. This is like the type of thing we do when we're drunk. We had an argument about Hemingway. And I've got a friend who, Hemingway stinks. He's a hack. His books are shit. So like, fucking hell, that's a bit strong. Like, what about Death in the Afternoon? So yeah, not a Hemingway guy. But yeah, it's probably something like that. Very hard question. Because there's stuff in The Great Shark Hunt. I used to carry... The Great Shark Hunt, for those who don't know, is a really big compilation of all of Hunter S. Thompson's magazine articles. He did like Scanlan's and Rolling Stone and stuff like that. And when I used to travel to events, I used to take The Great Shark Hunt with me. And it's still on the shelf. It's old. It's fucked up. The covers are hanging off. The spine's completely gone, just like me in real life. But I used to read that every time I was at events. So I could get into the feel of what I wanted to convey, which is I always approached esports that I was an outsider. I was going undercover. This was a subculture. I'm infiltrating it, but I'm also my own person, and write it up like that. And so that book probably influenced me the most, but it isn't a novel. It's a series of articles. It's a compendium, so I don't really know. And someone in the chat says you're not a big fan of Dostoevsky. Very big fan of Dostoevsky, but not fucking Tolstoy. Come on. I don't like all that, overwrought, overwritten storytelling. I don't like Dickens, And see, it's not even fiction, but it sort of is. So I don't know. I don't even read a lot of fiction. I didn't even answer the question very well. I'll have to revisit that. Hyom says, since you're now independent and I've been doing it for a few months, how do you find being your own editor versus having oversight from editors in your previous publications? So I don't like editing other people's work. I never liked it. I never liked it when I was an editor. It was one of the things I wanted to get away from. I find it so fucking dull. I don't understand how people can do it. What I find hilarious is people who fucking they invalidate all of my entire work if it has typos. And this is how you can spot somebody who's either still in college or just isn't very intellectually developed. They think when you make a spelling error, they think it's because you can't spell and won't run a spell checker. That's what they think. What they don't realize is that, yes, I obviously can spell, but when you're typing and you're banging out something, a deadline super fast, sometimes typos are going to occur. Because I'm typing, you know what I mean? It's not... It's not like that. Then the other thing, of course, is very often the typos that get through, you will notice, the typos that get through are typos where you miss out a letter, but the word forms another word. Well, a spell checker doesn't catch that. So it's not that you don't even run a spell checker. It's that you do run a spell checker, but those words get through. And then they go, look, it's so unprofessional. It's so unprofessional. You can show an article to like 10 people, and the article can have typos in, and 10 people won't pick up on them because our brains are trained to fucking just to auto-correct in our brains. And so ask yourself, what type of cunt looks at an article, can only see the typos, and thinks the article is worthless as a result of there being typos? I've seen people suggest on Reddit I should, spend 50% of the money I make to have somebody basically check my articles for typos. No, I'm not going to do that. Nor do I think having typos invalidates my work when the New York Times, with a staff of like 400 people, has typos in it with award-winning editors. I'm not going to do that. So the bottom line is, how do I find it? That's the only frustration. I think in general, the people who criticize my work, I mean, it's hilarious. So there's two criticisms of my work, and they're in polar opposites with each other based on a type of work that I write. When I was doing the Evil Geniuses, people are going, oh, this is a bit dry. It's reportage. You don't want to add too much of a flourish to it. You have to be careful with that. I'm telling a story, but I can only retell the story factually as it's been told to me and as my research will verify. Then, when I write something like the send off to CSGO I just put on my Substack, people go, oh, it's just like he's ranting. It's really unprofessional. It's got like jokes in it. Which one is it? Do I have no voice, or is my voice too loud? Oh, right, that's it. You're just a cunt. You're just a hater. I could write a fucking masterpiece. It would never be enough for you. So there's no point in, it's like I say, you get to a point where you understand the feedback is worthless because it comes from the same names, the same people. It'll never be good enough for them. They're in every thread about every single thing you write. And they just hate readers. And it's fine. I got your click anyway, dickhead. So who gives a fuck? Tasty AMG, Patreon question. There are lots of predictions at the moment saying China is looking to invade or attack Taiwan in the next few years. Do I think this will happen? And what would the ramifications be, given how strong the reaction is to the ongoing situation in Ukraine? I mean, look, yeah, I think it's possible. I think like China, there's definitely a reason why they're flexing, like they did with the planes flying overhead, and they basically made a point of a military display at a time when the world was in disarray, and I get that. But, in terms of what would the reaction be, given the strong reaction to Ukraine, there's absolutely no way there is a strong reaction from the world. Just not at all. In fact, do you remember how when Donald Trump took a phone call from the leader of Taiwan, congratulating him on his election win, and then publicly said, I've taken a phone call from the leader of Taiwan who congratulated me on my election win? The fucking media said, Donald Trump's going to plunge us into World War III. He's going to get us into a war with China. How dare he recognize Taiwan's sovereignty? That's what they did, right? Because Orange Man bad, no matter what he does. This shows how he lacks diplomacy. Well, if that's what the fucking state media say, obviously Joe Biden, any Democrat leader that comes in, they're just not down for trouble with China. I see all these people saying we're setting up for a war with China. There's no fucking way. I don't buy that for a second. I think China can pretty much do what they want. I think China are the superpower right now. And I think this is reflective in almost every country's foreign policy. And everything we do, going right down to the way we handled the pandemic. That should be strong evidence for everybody about where China is positioned globally to where we are now in terms of other things. With like economic decisions, turning a blind eye to that formation of that fucking group with the Middle East, including, Iran and Saudi Arabia getting around the table at the same time. I just don't think anyone will give two fucks about Taiwan. I mean, shit, we didn't really give a fuck to the dismantling of democracy in Hong Kong. And the West has more of a historical tie to Hong Kong. So, yeah, I don't know. Kind of feels like we're all dancing to their tune, unfortunately. So, yeah. And then the last question is Reformed Doge. He says, Richard, if you could build a Brexit 11 of Premier League footballers who embody the spirit of the classic long ball 4-4-2 of years past, please include a manager as well. Well, obviously, if we're doing a day in the life of a true Brexit geezer, I can't even talk.
It's looking lovely today, lads.
It has to be Sam Allardyce, who just got fucking relegated today. Let's see. So, who's in goal? Who was that fucking goalkeeper who ate the pie? He's in nets. You know which one I'm talking about. That dude, he goes in. I don't even care if he never played in the Prem. He just goes in. Yeah, he's in. He is the ultimate Brexit geezer. He fucking ate a pie on the pitch. Wayne Shaw, that's the cunt. Wayne Shaw. He's a Brexit geezer. Or you have the other keeper. Was it Wayne Hennessy, the one who did the salute and then pretended he didn't know what the salute meant? That's the kind of Brexit-y Nigel Farage shithouse thing to do, isn't it? So he can be. Those are the keepers. Carlton Palmer in midfield. Carlton Palmer, David Batty centre mid. That's an easy one. You got a guy who can't play but runs all the time, and a guy who can't play but kicks all the time. Can't put Vinnie Jones in there. Vinnie Jones isn't even true Brexit, remember, because he did a heel turn and pretended he was Welsh. And that's not gonna you can't have that. Can't have that. That's not very Brexit, is it? So centre backs, Maguire gets arrested when he goes abroad. It doesn't get more Brexit than that. Who else is going to play? Shit centre-back. Yeah, Phil Jones isn't particularly Brexit. He is just shit and injured all the time. Much like the economy was after Brexit, though. So he could be there as like a totemistic hiring. Yeah, go on. Have Razor Ruddock in there. Right back, Danny Mills. Left back, Julian Dix. That's easy. That's your back four. We got the keeper. We got the centre mid. Now we have the wingers. Got to be careful with this one because there's been some saucy choices down the years. Stice is straight in there, right? Grealish is pure Brexit. I will say Grealish is pure Brexit. Like, yeah, he's got that smell of Brexit. Right, so we'll have him left wing. Strikers, perfect. Vardy and Wayne Rooney. That's perfect Faramir. That is legit. Like, I'm 100% on board with that. Vardy is shit, chat shit, get banged though. That is it. Wayne Rooney getting knocked out, shagging grannies. You gotta fucking love it. Both of their misses in the stands, arguing. Peter Crouch on the bench, yeah, fair enough. Crouchy on the bench. And then right winger. We just need a right winger. Who's a Brexity right winger? I don't want Beckham in. He sort of is, yeah. Is he though? Well, he's got too much class. He's too sexy, isn't he? Can't have that. Can't have that. Why is right wing the problem position for Brexit? Why is that? Why is that the problem? Like, the irony of that is so ridiculous. Was Andy Sinton a right winger? He's not very Brexit. That's pre-Brexit, isn't it? I mean, it's all sort of pre-Brexit. But can't have Milner. All right. It's not his fault. Steve Stone. I didn't want to put him in, but Steve Stone on the right wing. He's bald. He's short. Looks like he likes a pint. Steve Stone on the right wing. Listen, all I'm saying is, right, Steve Stone, when he used to play, you'll understand, if you're a bit too young for Steve Stone, you'll get it in a minute, right? This is Steve Stone. As you can see, Steve Stone, who's a Geordie, by the way, looks like if Phil Mitchell got his shit together, quit drinking, and went down the gym for a bit. But, unfortunately, because of that, it means that Steve Stone, as soon as he quits football, will turn into an overweight gammon, as is the curse. He's got them ogre genes. Same as me. So, yeah. There you go. That's my Brexit. I've actually done a Brexit 11. Rock bottom for the stream in many ways, but thanks for the question. We'll pick up all the rest of the questions in the channel next month. Except Mouses, who just keeps asking me questions. It's like me and Mouse are dating. It's fucking endless stream of questions. Talk about yourself some, maybe. I don't know.